I am Chris Emden. I am an African-American man with a beard. I am wearing a white hat with a blue band on it and a salmon blazer. I think it's salmon. Well, welcome to the Collider Classroom, the post-pandemic classroom, the Rashidemic classroom. It is a space that embodies the concept of radical welcoming and radical hospitality. It was constructed to be able to consider the dynamics that are at play post-pandemic, considering what young folks have gone through, the challenges of educators, and what a futurist classroom could look like. We want this to be a space that inspires you, that motivates you to take aspects of this space and make it a part of what you do in your own classroom. I'll run through really quickly some of the elements of this classroom that I'm super excited to share with you about. And then we're gonna have a panel of experts, these brilliant souls that help me to bring my vision to life. First, you will see a blackboard that is sitting in the midst of a green sort of space. And it's really important for us to do that because the blackboard is often the space where young folks are most scared of. It's that place that sort of conjures up all the negative emotions about teaching and learning. And to put that in the midst of green, that is welcome, that is joy, that is relaxation, was so important because we wanted to sort of counter the negative emotion of the board with the green space of the classroom. I also gotta show you this, which is like one of my favorite things ever. On this platform that is big enough for young folks to sit and lounge on, we have this little cubby. And the cubby's sort of hidden into the space, but it allows young folks to be able to hold materials, to store their information, to store notes, etc. And it's sort of filtered in a way where it's seamless. So the classroom doesn't have to be a place that just has junk filtered everywhere. And there's one of these cubbies for every student in the entire classroom. Like, dream it with me, people. We also have, of course, this amazing floor, and I hope you can see it. And the floor is equal parts blackboard and whiteboard. And it is there because we want young folks to write everywhere. We want them to have the agency to be able to share their words, their voices, their notes, etc. And so everything here is writable, and that's super important. I also, what else I have to talk about? The seating arrangements. Like, there are stools and regular chairs and stools that wobble and lab seats. And the point is to understand that in the midst of the pandemic, young folks had agency to sit wherever they wanted at home. And so a post-pandemic classroom has to give them multiple options as well. I know I said the cubby was my favorite part, but I have like another favorite part. My other favorite part that I thought was really important is that every classroom space must have art. Not just something curated by some arbitrary person, but art that was constructed intentionally to speak to the souls of young folks. And so we have a body of work here by brilliant artists who you'll meet soon, that's sitting here that says, imagine the person you could be if you let someone love all of you. We also have neon art over there. And the art represents where the young folks are. It represents their emotions. It represents their culture. It represents their understandings. And then my other favorite part that I think is so important for us is to understand that we speak to young folks without words. And we oftentimes do that with music and lighting. And so the post-pandemic classroom must consider music, must consider lighting. And we have an exemplar of lighting and music that invokes calm. Sit with us, you'll feel it and hear it. And imagine the classroom that allows the space to let young folks know where they are. Like, just hearing it, my volume decreased, like my energy just came down. And then we also have curated sounds around other emotions. Another example I will show you guys, in addition to many more that we've curated, is belonging. Welcome to a classroom that feels like this. There's something conjured up emotionally that makes you feel as though you belong and that you're warm and invited. And one of the most significant features of the classroom is the wall. And I imagine a wall that is a screen that is the size of as large as you can have it. And the idea is to recognize that young folks in the middle of a pandemic has formed deep relationships to screens and deep relationships to social media, and that the screens in the classroom can guide us with tailored images around emotion, like focus. And as I come to a close, we also want to create almost like a data management system that has artists as well as young people curating, creating, collecting, defining what they want to see come through that wall. And one exemplar of that is this video I want to share on just Black joy, because we're in a season where it's more needed than ever before. Like, if you didn't feel magic from that, you don't have a soul. But the last really important piece, in addition to all these amazing features of the classroom, as we envision what's going forward and all the stimuli in the space, is it was essential for us to think about a place where young folks on their own can go individually to sort of decompress, that features a screen that has messages sent directly to them, and also a place where a teacher can go before they begin a school day to be able to just have affirmations and remind them of the significance of their work. And so right now, we want you guys to see the sort of background space that's in every classroom for folks to be able to go back and sort of find themselves again in the work of teaching. And that are all the physical elements of the Collider Classroom. And so now I want to introduce you guys to my team. These amazing and brilliant folks to help me to bring this project to life. And we'll talk about the elements of the classroom, why it's important, their philosophies and their perspectives. And I'll start with you, Ed.
Yeah. Good morning, folks. My name is Dr. Ed Manajapong. I am a professor of education at Seton Hall University. I'm also a faculty fellow at the Institute of Urban and Minority Education at Teachers College, Columbia University. And I'm a Black male. I have a high top. That's my hairstyle. And I'm wearing a green blazer with a white shirt. And I'm excited to be with you all today.
My name is Wilson Torres. I am a musician, composer, artist. I am a Dominican male wearing a blue blazer, a gray shirt, and a pork pie hat, and sporting a trimmed beard, I guess, yeah.
Hi, my name is Maureen Friedman. I am a designer for performance. I am an Israeli woman, fair skin, wearing a black dress, and I have dark hair pulled back, wearing round glasses. And thank you very much for having me.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Ian Levy. I'm an assistant professor of school counseling at Manhattan College, also the director of the school counseling program there. I'm a white male with no hair and a beard, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm also wearing a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up.
Gotcha. Good morning. My name is Ronald Draper, a visual artist, creative visionary, educator. I'm a Black male with a shaggy waves because my barber's out of town. Beard, dark skin, and a, I guess, cream colored coffee shirt.
Coffee with cream works.
Yeah, coffee with cream. Polo shirt, and I'm excited to be here.
So you guys, like, this has been, you know, an amalgamation of work and effort and phone calls from me and bothering you and transporting things and a whole bunch of concepts. But, you know, one thing I want to start off with, like, how much you guys have been so invested in the process and creation of this classroom. I just want to hear from you guys generally, like what drew you to be a part of a project on envisioning a post-pandemic classroom? Like what made you say, okay, I'll sign up to do this thing?
For me, it was just speaking to you. I was really excited when Kevin, the production manager, introduced me to your work. And what got me excited was that you were talking about something that hit a nerve, not as a designer, not as a teaching artist, but as someone who went through the school system, because you were talking about stuff that I wish I could have had the words to describe when I was going through the school system. When you were talking, when you were centering around the student and just imagining what I went through, what I could do if people had said something different, if people had arranged the space in a way that wasn't necessarily one solution fits all. If people had perhaps listened more and thought about things, not just from the teacher's perspective or the system's perspective, but thought of us as people, not as you're a child until you're 18 and then you get a personality.
Yes. It was really important. Like this radical centering of the students was really important. All right, the rest of y'all, like what brought you in? What brought you in?
Yeah, I think similar to Maureen, I think growing up, I had horrible experiences in schools, right? I think schools were never affirming to me, never reflected who I was or who I wanted to be. So I think it was a great opportunity for us to really support in using this moment within the pandemic and all the changes that we've had to kind of adjust to create kind of a vision, an idea, an installation of what classrooms could and should be like moving forward, like taking advantage of the moment and the opportunity. I think is super important and powerful.
Oh, so I'm because already I'm already getting all the feels and stuff, but I think one of the powerful things that both of you were talking about is like not looking at this moment as necessarily a negative thing, right? Like, we choose to see the world the way we desire to. It doesn't mean there hasn't been loss, and doesn't mean that we haven't been brokenness, but it's an intentional decision to utilize even these moments as opportunities to center young people. And so I love that. I love that. All right, the rest of you.
Just building right on that. Sorry, man.
No, go ahead.
Like there's an inherent resilience. Like in all the time that I've worked with young people, like we see resilience, I think, in the moments where there's pain. So we can choose to look at brokenness, which I think all too often happens. Or we can choose to say, well, what would it be like if we tapped into those negative feelings to foster growth and to foster development? And that was what really interested me about this space. Just like coming in and figure out how do we counter negative emotions and put young people in the driver's seat and tapping into their own resilience and potential to excel,
Facts.
Well, I kind of looked at it twofold, right? So if something is in need of a change, that means there's an opportunity to kind of slide something else in there, right? So growing up, I'm pretty sure we all know the whole aspect of schools and just classrooms was not built for people who look like me, right? They were never spaces that were comfortable for us. So if they're going to dismantle that classroom anyway for a pandemic, why not kind of find an opportunity to shift the dynamic of what it means to create something new that's inclusive for everybody now, right? Not just something that's just a better version of what we had, something completely different that also makes it very comfortable and affirming for people who look like me, because you've never had that experience growing up. So why not kind of be able to inject that into the system too?
It's the comfort and affirming for me. Like, I think that's what I really wanted to capture. Like, I wanted to capture something where if a young person walked in, they'd be like, yo, I feel like I could be affirmed. Like, I feel like myself in here. And it's fly. Like, I think we oftentimes under focus upon that dimension, like because we consider it superficial, right? But it's not superficial to look good. It's not superficial for a place to feel good. It's not superficial for it to have that kind of like positive energy. So I dig that. And I'm gonna go to you, Wilson, because the sonic piece I think is so important. And as an artist and a music director, like what do you think is the role of music in creating space to make folks feel affirmed and comfortable?
Well, I mean, that's what drew me in. It was just the thought of how you can shift an emotion. If someone's coming in feeling a certain way, how can you make it welcoming for them? And music definitely, sound has the power to do that. You can, that was really what drew me in. It was just, how can I make someone feel calm?
Mm.
How can I help them? I mean, and because then you're dealing with all these other obstacles, and then how can you sonically, and then it's just because then it also aligns with just your body itself. Like if you want to root somebody, it's like the root chakra. You want to, like, even the calming thing was, it's a C. So the frequency of that know itself, it helps whether whether you're acknowledging it or not, or like aware of it or not. Once you walk into that space, you can't help but feel that, because the vibration itself is healing you in a way. So it's the power of that. So
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really important as we designed a physical space was to recognize the subconscious, right? Like to recognize the unseen, and to have in every classroom all these supporting teachers to support the teacher. And so when I think about all the things you guys have created, I think about them as teachers. I'm like, oh, so Wilson's introducing us to the music, who's gonna help the teacher. Like, so like the music is a co-teacher, right? Like the art is a co-teacher. And I think this idea of giving like life to things that people consider inanimate allows us, now we have friends who are guiding the young folks along that you beautiful people have created. I want to go to Maureen for a little bit, because so, one of the things that struck me about our initial conversation was, one, you're like unbridled enthusiasm to take this on, which I was like, really? Because like it was a lot. But the other part was, for me, you kept saying to me, I've had some experiences in classrooms, but I'm not really a teacher. Like you're like, I'm so excited to do this. Like I want to be able to create classes, and there were all these disclaimers. But I didn't say that in a way that's like bad. Like I felt like your disclaimers made you approach it with more care. I just want to hear about those emotions of like, it's a classroom, I only teach sometimes, and not really, like, talk us through those emotions and how that gets manifested into this space.
Yeah. Well, I think just being aware that you were coming from a place with a lot of research, and usually when I usually work with a script, whether it's written, music, dance, and I spend a lot of time researching that. And then there's a lot of conversation back and forth, because my work as a designer can't exist on its own. I have to work with a team of people, and ultimately you perform in that space. So I have to, if you like, design and leave a lot of gaps. But when I'm coming to design a space that is not a yes, you work here, but it's not a performance space per se, and it's totally
in the traditional
open.
sense, right?
Yeah. It was something very different. And I think also knowing that you were an educator and other people involved were, and I came at it as a teaching artist, I had been in different classrooms, but I've always taken a step back, because that's the classroom I'm in. So figure it out, think on your feet, and make this class work in this classroom, that classroom, and everything else. And because I'm always a guest in the classroom, I always feel that I need to take just a step back and thinking about suggestions of how to change. I'm thinking, well, is it really my place to do that? And why I got enthusiastic was exactly that. I'm thinking, you know what? Why don't I just approach it as, like I said before, a space that I would want to come and learn in, not necessarily teach in. Although what I really like is that the space is not just conducive for students, it's a space for teachers to come in and feel that they want to be here. But so that was the space, and it was just like conjuring up all these things about, always getting punished for writing on the tables. But there's something about, even now with them on the computer, I'm grabbing these envelopes and stuff, not even a piece of paper, that I just scribble on, because there's some freedom about that before actually writing on the page or on a document, even that I know it's so much easier. There's a freedom about, not having to pick and choose these chairs, and some are great and some aren't. It's like saying, well, could I just pick the one that I kind of feel comfortable in? Or constantly, wanting to be at the back of the class.
But having an option to be able to choose that. I think it is so important. Like, and I love when you said your hesitation was based on you feeling like a guest, which is exactly what radical welcoming functions to counter. Because when you feel like you're a guest in the space, then you hesitate to give your full self. So I think that was powerful. And then I'm going around on this one because the space was the space and it was cool. And then that goes up. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden the energy shifts, right?
Yes.
And I want to play with the concept of being a guest, right? The thing about your work is, you know, your work is there to make the home. It's never like your art can never be the guest, right?
No.
Somebody picked that because it invoked in them something that made a place welcome.
Or it's made for that.
It was made for that. So I want you to talk about being a guest. I want to talk about your work in the context of how it welcomes or welcoming and your art.
Ooh. So I guess it gets kind of the process of how I approach works in school, right? So I do a lot of visuals for schools all over the city. And the biggest thing, I go in kind of as a guest, but going in, like you said, learning about what are you trying to do with this school? What are you guys trying to build? What are your goals over the next 5 to 10 years? What are things that you want your kids to know that you really can't get into them? Which kind of goes to that point that you made about being co-teachers, right?
Yes.
Like, how does my art reinforce what you guys want to do? So I'm not necessarily ever creating artwork that reinforces like something that's already like the theme. It's more so, what are the things you're trying to get through that you can't? And then how do I kind of fill that void? So I'm always the guest trying to figure out, how do I speak up for something that you guys can't really get across as strongly? How do I make something that isn't that strong the strongest thing in the building?
So that's so like, no, we get like I get hyped because I think that's what space does, right?
Yeah.
You know, a carefully curated space with young people allows them to get all the information that the other student serving people might not convey, right? And I use that phrase, student serving people, because I think in the world, we must all see ourselves as student serving people.
Absolutely.
Because once we do that, our approach to engaging with them is completely different. You know what I mean? Like, that's the part. So Ian, you know, you're the, you know, SEL guy, you're the, you know, emotional space, and we work together to construct this video around emotions. Talk to me about, how do visuals help to manage emotion or address emotional challenges?
Yeah, well, so I think it's a mix of things, right? Like what you just said was so fire, like this idea that
Thank
we
you.
can communicate something that is like unsaid through something visual, right? And like wanting to sort of bring that to the fore. And so we thought really strategically about like, what are the emotions that students might return to schools with in this post-pandemic world, right? And things like self-doubt, things like rejection, right? And so how do we counter those? Well, we counter those by creating visual representations of those counter emotions, things like acceptance, things like joy, things like resilience, things like relaxation, like all these beautiful emotions that help counter the negative ones. And we can do that visually. So we created, right, this like montage of pictures that were matched with some of Wilson's music, as well as some like hip hop beats, because we know that that's just what it's got to be, right? And so we created this like these really dope montages that allow young people to, when we know that okay, well, they're coming in with this self-doubt today, like we can plug this up, or young people themselves can learn to ask for those things.
That part.
And that's the next piece. So they can ask for it to bring it up, but then they can learn to curate their own versions of that thing.
Yeah.
So we didn't create like a relaxation, like this is the one that everybody in the world should use for relaxation. Like that would be illogical. What we did do was we created a platform to now be able to facilitate conversations in this actual space, like with students, and ask them like, what would it be like to create a visual representation of the things that you're feeling right now, to propel them, to counter them, whatever it is. Find music, create your own visuals, broadcast that up on a screen. Young people are now in control of their own understanding of how they're feeling, their creation and curation of their own like coping mechanisms to deal with those things. They're their own counselor. The screen is like you said, it's the co-teacher. It's now the school counselor in the room through this visual wall, which I think is beautiful.
I make my own counselor. Like I make my own counselor. I make my own teacher. I make my own friend, right? With this thing I have in this space. So, you know, Dr. Ajapong, you know, you're the teacher educator, right? Like you understand the science of teaching and learning. And so I want you to dream out loud with us about what a teacher could do with a space like this, right? Like if you were teaching your teachers, you know, what would you say to them about the pedagogical implications of creating a space like this?
Yeah. I think the beauty of this space is that it lends, like we talk about the space being a co-teacher for teachers,
Yeah.
right? But I think that this space lends so many opportunities for the teacher to kind of delve in and connect with students, right?
Mhm.
In my work, I think it's super important. We talk about cultural relevance, right? And a teacher and educator can never be culturally relevant unless they have a deep understanding of the authentic needs and realities of their students, right? So we're talking about curating art pieces, right? You have to connect with students to figure out, okay, what do you like?
Mhm.
What do we bring it together? And if it's something that's different than what the teacher's expecting, you can create spaces to have conversations about those things, right? So it just provides opportunities for the teachers to get a deeper understanding of their students, but it also provides opportunities for the teacher to introduce different things to the students, right? So it's important to be culturally relevant, right? And we recognize that 80+% of our teachers are white women. And it's important for teachers to bring in their true selves into the space as well, right? You can't be culturally relevant only for your students and
Not for
remove
yourself.
yourself, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay for whoever you are, whatever you identify as, to bring that true self into that space
Yeah.
and create opportunities to have that reflect in the space as well. So you can introduce your students to something different as well. But it's really about just curating the space that allows everyone to feel comfortable and creating opportunities to connect, right? I think pedagogically as well, right? We also think, like, you see art, we have neon art, right?
Mhm.
So the art and science, the science behind neon and neon art, and how do you create this work, right? How is it put together, right? And how do you get the artist to come in maybe and come into space and be like, okay, this is my work, this is what I do, and providing different opportunities for students to see different paths.
Because young folks don't even see
Right.
careers in art as a viable
Right.
career. I think
Right.
sometimes just putting that in the space allows them to see that.
Or they're pushed away from it,
Right.
right? So welcoming, like, you can make a career out of this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And nurturing them early on, if that's their choice, they have an option to choose that.
You know, I almost was remiss in saying this. Like, one of the things we thought about was the emotion we missed was smell.
Mm.
And I was like, I really wanted to have like lavender and peppermint and
Yeah.
diffusers and have that invoke some stuff as well. And it reminds me of Wilson's conversation about what the sound invokes. And I think the sound and smell together invoke something really particular. But I want to ask you specifically about one thing you created. So we asked Wilson to create a sonic backdrop that was joy. And I was really fascinated about what you chose. Because when I listened to it, it had a very, like, it was a very, like, I don't know, it felt like Washington Heights. It felt really Dominican, like joy as you invoked it. It took me somewhere. Talk me through that selection. And it's so funny because when you said joy, I just said it now, you smiled, right? How did your culture get infused into how you created your perception of joy? Because I thought that was something really unique and beautiful. I heard Wilson when I heard joy.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was the thing. It was the tricky part was, like, because what if you look at it in this perspective, right? What is joy? And, like, to me, I think of a hot summer day in Washington Heights. I grew up there, you know, and I mean, I did think about the scientific version of it. You know, I used the key of A, which is the brightest key, so it's supposed to evoke all these brightness, overtones, and whatnot. But
wait, hold up, you ain't gonna drop them bars. You're not gonna drop them bars.
But no,
Like, you use A's, brightest key, and then plus. Can we talk about that a little bit more, like
But-
that?
Yeah, you know, so it's the same as I was saying, like, when you think about calming, you use the frequency of C, which is the root chakra.
Yeah.
So you go into that, and, like, that's supposed to set the foundation for it. And
Yeah.
you can build things on top of it, but that's always there. That's the drone.
Yeah.
So that's already going to be settling in. So when you think of joy, I automatically think of the brightest key. When you look at the overtone series and the way it's broken down, the key of A is known as the brightest key.
Yeah.
So it has 3 sharps, and just the way it lays out it starts with an A, then an E on top, and then keeps on layering up. You can't help but listen to something in this key, and it brightens you up. If you're thinking of something a little bit more dark, you would use E flat, which also has 3 flats. So it goes into that.
Yeah.
So that was the initial thing.
Mhm.
So I had to be my physics. I had to lay that first.
Right.
And then I thought, well, what is the thing that brings me the most joy? It's just listening to a simple piano montuno. Just
Mhm.
dig it again, boom, again. I've never seen someone or a facial expression while they're listening to this type of music be sad.
Yeah.
It's almost infectious. Like, you got to get up and dance. You got to move. You don't stay still. So that's where that came from. It was just tapping into something that that would bring me out of, if I'm feeling in any sort of mood and any joy, bam, that's what it is.
So here's the thing, y'all, and this is what I want y'all who are watching this to understand. How crazy is it that teachers get trained on how to deliver information to young folks who have a bevy of emotions and have had all those emotions like little magnified over the course of this pandemic, and no one's having conversation about the keys of life that are essential to have them feel welcome in the class. Like, I think that's a travesty. I think it's a travesty that we extract out all the dimensions of all you're saying from teaching and learning and expect them to just go back. And that a teacher education course does not have you lecturing. No, it's a problem, right? Like a teacher education class does not have a recognition of the fact that you can construct art to do things in that way. Like, it's a travesty. And so, like, I'm sorry, like, I be in my feelings, and I was just so struck by that in such a powerful way, man, that like it just makes it makes me like angry. And then it makes me so like excited about what could be. You know what I mean? All right, so my next set of questions. You know, there's a lot of conversation now about the significance of social emotional learning that I would argue is really superficial. It's like, ask kids how they feel. And then when they share how they feel, keep teaching anyway. Like, so like, I want you to talk through that attention to social emotional learning and how it may connect to how we've been looking at creating context for social emotional learning through lighting and sound.
Yeah, well, so it can't be prescribed, right? It must be malleable. If I'm talking about emotions, like if I'm opening up the door for emotions to come into the classroom, anything could walk through that door. I can't pre-package, let's talk about these emotions on Wednesday for 13 minutes. Like it doesn't work like that, right? It's process based, which I think all art is. And all of what we've created is that, right? And so how do I learn how to be in conversation with students about emotions and throw everything else away if I need to sit in that for a long time? How do I learn to create multiple avenues for youth to tap into those emotions and create from them? So the sound is a piece of that. Like young people can tell you what sounds they want to be in the classroom. As a result of having those conversations, they can tell you what visuals they want in the classroom. They can talk about what kind of seats are there. They could talk about smell. Like at my house
This is
smells
Maureen's
different than
point
yours.
about agency.
Yes.
That's Maureen's point about agency. Like re-emerging through what you're sharing.
100%. And so that they can just curate, right? I think that's the shift needs to be that we can't be overly prescribed.
Yeah.
It can't be all curriculum, right? And I'm not saying no curriculum, but how is curriculum malleable? How is space malleable? How do we create structure that enables us to deviate when we need to, because students need to go another direction and we need to go there with them.
So essentially, it's how does the teacher be malleable? Like, how does the teacher learn to be nimble? Essentially, because a teacher's nimbleness in an environment that is conducive to it allows it to happen, which is why, part of our work here at Lincoln Center Education around teaching as performance art is so important. Because if you look at the teacher as a performance artist, then you can't be static. There's an element of nimbleness that's essential to your construction of an identity as artists. You know what I mean? Like, that's just so fire. So Ron, I gotta go to that piece specifically, which, I hope one day I can afford. Like, like the phrase, fam, like, imagine the person you could be if you let someone love all of you. Like, you've got to break that down, where that came from, and then also how that connects to the classroom.
Oh, okay. Definitely didn't think I'd be doing this. Is from deep work with my therapist, right? In which all of 2009, so little context, which me and Ian spoke about earlier. Every year I take a piece of, so imagine all the work that I create throughout the year, paint falls everywhere. There's a piece of cloth that catches all that paint that protects some of my floor. And every year that piece of cloth becomes a piece of artwork. So what you're looking at here is just a combination and a multitude, just like the aggregate of all the work I've done throughout the year. So what happens is every year, probably about the spring or so, I try to recapture, just kind of like capture my whole year, the last 12 months in a particular phrase. So from, let's say, spring 2019 to spring 2020, I came up with this because all of the work that year between myself, my wife, my therapist was really all about, you're worried about everyone else loving you, but how do you kind of create the space for them to do so? in which we can create all of these. It's funny, it's a conversation you and I have, Maureen, right? In which
Yeah.
how are we creating safe spaces that allows them to be their full selves, right? Because teachers can be their full loving. I can love Ed all I want, right? In the way I know to, but am I loving Ed or am I loving who Ed is giving me to love?
Oof. Yo, go grab Ratchetdemic. Ian, just grab that real quick, please. Thank you, bro. Yeah, yeah.
Like the difference is, I'm loving who I think all of Ed is, but if Ed isn't the one, if Ed isn't giving me all of Ed,
Yes.
am I actually loving all of it? So
Mhm.
it's a two-part thing. It's a tangle that people do.
Mhm.
And teachers can do all things, but if I'm not
Yeah.
providing a safe space for Ed to be who his entire self is, then how can I love all of Ed the way he needs to be loved?
Yes, sir.
So this whole piece goes from like, listen, I have to expect this of myself before I expect of anybody.
Yeah.
I tell all my students, before I expect you to do these things, before I expect you to be vulnerable in the artwork that you guys are creating, because I'm an art educator, I have to absolutely practice the same thing. So like, this might be the first time anyone's ever asked me about this. No one's seen this. I made this I finished it probably at the beginning of the pandemic. So you're probably the first 5 people who've seen it outside of my studio.
Well, and
and
Everybody else.
and the crew watching
like,
out
no
there.
one's seen this live, so I've never had to really explain this and kind of go into where that came from. But
Yeah.
Thank you for
that-
being so
thank you.
vulnerable,
Nah,
man.
of course. That whole series of work, and also artists are it's much easier for us to be vulnerable because you guys are judging our feelings as things that look like this.
Yeah.
So it's way easier for me to create these super deep, vulnerable moments like that because you guys see this and admire it first as opposed to judging from it.
Mm.
So art has always been where emotions transcend, man.
Wait,
That's
hold
why I
up.
love
Then
the
you
space
come
I'm in.
to the work admiring it before judging. And isn't that the way that we need to approach how we engage with young people?
Oh, yeah.
To admire and find the gift in them first before we judge them based on our preconceptions. So I told you to grab the book because the whole book, you just captured the essence of it, right? Like the concept of Ratchetdemic is that our ratchet selves are supposed to be like our worst selves, like the loud selves, the obnoxious selves, the selves that we don't let in. And our academic selves are like the polished selves. They speak at Lincoln Center and they're really polished. And, and it's like, how do we create a world where we can all be Ratchetdemic and allow ourselves to see ourselves as ourselves? And that's what this was about. Like the first thing I said to Maureen when we were designing, I said, I want a blackboard floor and a whiteboard floor for young folks to be able to write on. Everything else we'll figure out, but that was important because as young folks write on the floor and share on the floor and create on the floor and draw on the floor, they're getting an opportunity to get their ratchet out. You're gonna see some terms and phrases you might not like in a corner of a classroom, right? But because it's all out and it's in an academic space, it becomes a Ratchetdemic classroom. Like all of a sudden, I've got those words out and I'm learning and no one's judging, then all of a sudden a different form of my identity is allowed to come forth. And so I'm about to put your teddy bear and the book and this like all together as a shared piece. I haven't heard from Maureen in a minute. And I want you to talk through like when I was like, have them write everywhere, as many writing places as possible. Like what awakened in you when you heard that? Was it like, is he crazy? Was it like, okay, like what were your thoughts around that concept?
I was super excited about it. There was an image I remember you sending me and just seeing the possibilities in that and having that freedom. And also the fact that you can rub it out and write something new, the fact that you could also interact with other people. It's like leaving a message or doing something together. Like it's not just you individual. This floor is everyone.
Yeah.
And to be able to have your own space, this also do something and then someone else put something on top and put something on top. And I mean, that's where I think as well. I come up with much better thoughts when there's someone else there because it causes me to think of something that I wouldn't have otherwise. And you were talking before about, admiring before you judge. I think it's also a way to become informed before you become so opinionated. And it's a lot of questions about what if. And as soon as I kind of went down that rabbit hole of stuff, there was just so much more. And the fact that it was also open-ended. It wasn't like the space is designed and then you come and fill it. That space is constantly changing.
That's right.
And I think also what I really liked about the fact is thinking about, like, what if this classroom, well, initially I thought, well, what if the classroom stays put and the teachers move?
Mm,
So you make it your own classroom.
yeah.
But if you are going to have the teacher's classroom and the students move, you're actually creating a much bigger space, because it's not just that classroom you're communicating with.
That's right. You're talking to so much more people.
Yeah.
Your audience expands based on that. That's ill. You want to jump in? I see it. You're doing
No, I'm thinking-
you're doing the double dutch. You guys doing a double dutch, and you're like,
You know, I mean, I'm gonna lean back into the conversation about art, right? And thinking about the importance of Black art
mm,
in all school spaces, right? Not in New York City, not in the Bronx, but in all school spaces. Because the conversation over the last year has been like, the conversation has always been, what are we missing in our curriculum,
mm.
right? Right? And you know, you have conversation with people, like Ron, we're talking about this, like that piece on Fifth Ave, right? And like how there's an absence, like folks like, oh, well, you know, we want the arts to represent all the students in school, right? And that's fine, I get that, right? But I think there's something significant about being intentional about having Black art
Mhm.
and having the incorporation of Black artists in all school spaces, because that's what's missing,
Yeah.
right? Blackness is missing in education.
It's been
right?
all the way around forever. We've had whiteness in
Right,
all
right,
schools.
yeah.
We just need the kind of balance.
Right.
Because of the fact that we're looking at equity as opposed to equality in the
Yeah.
sense that we're making up for X amount of years without Black, that it seems like an overflow, but
Yeah.
it goes to
Yeah.
just kind of balancing it out.
And it's another opportunity to bring community in
Mhm.
to school spaces, right? Like Ron, he's an educator, he's an art educator,
Yeah.
right? But like there are artists who don't, like Rob. Rob doesn't work at a school, right? But we can.
Well, first of all, we didn't even talk about Rob's pieces. I
Right.
like because Rob
Yeah, you
Rob
can't
ain't
just do
come
Rob.
kick it on the pit.
Yeah,
Like
you can't just do Rob
I
out
hope
there.
y'all peep the neon art.
right?
Like that was a whole other level.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I'm sorry, did I cut you
No,
off?
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just thought for me it was so funny how it was about multiple forms of art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because Rob is not just a neon artist, right? Like he's also a visual artist in the digital sphere. And young folks don't realize that like I could be an artist that does work digitally.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
And I think part of what you were saying earlier, and I think it's so important, is through what you do in the classroom, you strike the imagination of a young person differently
Yeah.
to want to go delve somewhere else. Like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, that song made me feel that way. Wait, I could be a musician. Wait, what kind of music? A musician that really thinks about emotions?
Mhm.
Wait, like, so that the you want the things in the classroom to be provocative enough
Yeah.
to awaken something that's been dormant in young folks or that they've not seen before. Like one of my favorite quotes is Bob Marley quote. It's like my favorite quote ever. And he goes, the most cowardly thing that man can do is awaken the love in a woman he doesn't intend to love, right? And I think that schools do that all the time, right? Like we're culturally relevant, we're culturally responsive, we're anti-racist. Like, so you're saying all these things, and folks like, wow, you really are awesome. And then you get in there, and it's like, nah, not the curriculum,
Just
or
ain't
what the
it.
classroom looks like, or
Right,
the
yeah.
environment.
Right.
And it's like, man, you made me feel like you were giving me something. You made me feel like you loved me.
Yeah.
You made me feel that I can get all of me, but you only wanted the part of me that made you feel comfortable.
And that's how we lose trust,
Mhm.
right? That's how we lose trust. And we talk about curriculum. This is curriculum,
Mm.
right? You could bring the art in and you could bring the artists in, right? And they're both coming from the community. They both are engaged, can engage with community, engaging with students. And we can find opportunities to bring the art in and have the artists come and talk about their process,
Yeah.
what their art means, their their vulnerability behind that. And these are aspects that, as an adult, I'm just now getting a glimpse of, right?
Mm.
But imagine if my 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 13-year-old self, got some insight into that, right? I can only imagine where my trajectory would have been, right? So it just provides different opportunities to get insight into innovation and how we can just be more creative about how we engage young people in classroom spaces.
I really, at the depths of my soul, believe that reimagining the classroom is like the seedbed for the transformation of education.
Yeah.
Like I think if you make the classroom right, even a teacher who's on that lame sucker vibe, like I would like to feel that if I was a teacher who was not trained in all the things we're talking about here that we want everybody to do, and you walked in to this classroom, you wouldn't be able to teach the same way. Like that's what I would like to invoke. Like
Yeah.
that somehow maybe the space you create invokes the person in the person to emerge. Like one of my favorite quotes, and now I'm using quotes all day, but you ever heard that quote when it says like when the student is ready, the teacher will emerge, right? And I always say, when the teacher who learns to be a student of their student shows up, then the teacher within them emerges. But that teacher needs a space to make them want to be a student of their students. And the right environment makes you, because from like, could you imagine this? I'm sorry, I'll be dreaming out loud. Like, so could you imagine the kids come in, they're in the class, they're like, oh my God, we can write everywhere, this is crazy. And they start writing and tagging up and they're putting things in, and then they leave the classroom, and then the teacher has 15 minutes to soak in what was left in the air, but also what was left on the floor, right? Like now you become a researcher. Like what they wrote that, they said that, they heard that. Like the classroom should be a place where there's a gathering of information about the young folks, and that's why they need to be able to write everywhere. You know what I mean? Yeah, you thinking, come on, flow.
So we're at our best, we're like a mirror, right?
Mhm.
So like students can see themselves through the things that we create in front of them, right?
Mhm.
So in this instance, students write all over the floor, they leave the classroom. I have 15 minutes to look at the floor, soak in all the information. Now I see the students in ways that I have not seen them before, potentially in ways that they have not seen themselves yet before, because
Yeah.
we know that all the unconscious stuff comes to the surface when we can
Mhm.
just write,
Yeah.
right? So now I can develop lessons the next day that intentionally push the person to dig even deeper into who they are, but also means that on Monday, I have no idea what is going to happen Tuesday until that 15 minutes after class ends Monday. Then
So
I start
find this-
prepping for. So the idea is that it's always changing, it's always developing, and I think this is the argument for a class like this, where you're going where it's going.
Maxine Green.
Yeah.
I am what I am not yet.
Yeah.
Right? Like that they know each time is a new iteration of the teacher and the student that will emerge. Like that's what the Collider Classroom invokes the becoming what I am not yet.
Mhm.
Like, so y'all look, we have 60 seconds to go. Sheesh. That went by quickly. I want to use the 60 seconds to say this, not a closer, but to say to each of you who have given your talents and your gifts and your time and your energy to help me to bring an idea to fruition, how deeply, deeply thankful I am for you. You're so gifted and so powerful, so informed, so talented, so caring, and so loving. And I think that if we all in the world approach the work of teaching with the same kind of energy you do, we could change the world. So in my last 20 seconds, thank you. Thank you for existing. Thank you for being. And thank all of you for joining us in this journey into the Collider Classroom. Thank you.